I just wanted to see the event in action, and if you have any recommendations for any locations that are like visually interesting.
I do videos. We can set something up.
Yeah, keep saying, and so he knows what kind of videos you do.
There's a lot that can be said about PvMP. The community is both passionate and pessimistic, plainly predictable, and wonderfully eccentric. A wide mix of players of different views, experiences, and skill levels thrown into one region with one direction and one purpose. PvP. The Moors is, in my opinion, a sandbox where the best way to play is to make your own fun. Update 45 is a major PvMP update. SSG is banking on the popularity of the Etymors to tide endgame players over until the new expansion. And this isn't unprecedented. It's a cycle that happens as every level cap draws to a close, and PvMP has always been there for some mindless fun. Yes, in the past it was neglected, and a few years back the producer was about ready to sunset it entirely. We've seen the Moors crawl back from the brink, and with this update, it's the first time we have seen some meaningful effort in adding to the experience of a brand new system. That's honestly quite rare. Of course, the design goal isn't just to keep people engaged in the game. While that's primarily the reason, the return of the creepside reward track indicates that monetization of PvMP is also important. Players may remember the creep reward track last year, but that was a one-time thing. The idea is that paid reward tracks will be a permanent addition to Monster Play moving forward. But I'm not here to blindly glaze Orion. While he's been pretty stellar at addressing the ample feedback given to him, I think it was predictable the update would release in a rather messy state. The resources SSG can even dedicate to the Moors are minimal at best, and the update released with several bugs, lag problems, and a recently patched exploit that might have caused some damage to the monetization goals. But we'll get back to that later, believe that. But first, a quick disclaimer. I'm going to be yapping severely. One of the purposes of Siege is to spread players around the map. This is done with incentives to capturing and holding keeps, and slowing down the process of assaulting a keep. Siege as a system is very rudimentary, but I think it has some potential for strategy and counterplay with only a few changes. Once you take a keep, you can build a gate if your faction controls a lumber camp. You reinforce the gate and get the oil cauldron up by turning in quests, as most players do. The opposing side can assault the keep if they use a battering ram on the gate. Defenders can create ballistas to put further pressure on the attackers if you set them up correctly. But a keep cannot defend itself. If the keep is assaulted, you need to defend it, which means you need to PvP. You know, the main reason you're in the Moors in the first place.
Well, boys, all's fair in love and war.
At least, that's the idea. In my experience, players tend to avoid the gate entirely by using the undersieves. It's quicker, it prevents enemies from having too much time to set up, and it completely skips the call-out message as the gate doesn't even get destroyed. And you entirely skip the process of using a battering ram, which honestly becomes a bit of a Sisyphean task if the keep has oil and people take pot shots at the rather squishy battering ram. Good luck attacking the gate. If presented with a choice, players will almost always take the easier option. It's simply easier to bum rush the keep from the undersieves, ignoring the bottom floor entirely, which leaves the initial gate and strengthened defenders in a bit of a state of limbo. So, what can be done about this? Well, I've talked to some knowledgeable players in the PvMP community, and I personally like the proposition of adding a second gate inside the keep. It will require attackers to kill the bottom floor mobs in order to open. Defenders should be able to move through the gate somehow and assist in the fight, or hide behind it to prepare for the assault. The purpose of this will be to slow attackers down just enough to allow the defenders to muster if they're outside the heap. But we've come to a second problem. The initial gate at the entrance stops both sides from walking through. Unprepared defenders need to go through the underseafs. How many times have I going to say that word? Which can take time. And considering most people choose to go through the underseafs anyway, the attackers will be inside, and it gives them way too much of a head start. The solution to that is also pretty simple. Just bring back the back doors, make them usable only out of combat, and put them in their original positions behind the keep. I think with those two changes, Siege will be about as good as it'll ever get. Not everyone will like Siege or even adapt to it, but I truly think it has potential to diversify fights and make fighting around keeps more engaging. With that out of the way, let's look at the current state of class balance. Namely creeps, because creeps are almost always balanced for PvE, the base game. Creep balance has a history of being neglected, so ideally they should be balanced around the current strengths and weaknesses of the creeps. I see two classes that are in need of a serious buff or rework, and both for different reasons. The Warg, specifically Shadow Stance, and the Black Arrow. Shadow Warg is probably the squishiest spec in the entire game. They have no consistent self-heals in combat, no combat-oriented defensive cooldown to speak of, they have pitifully low limits, and in order to do enough damage to be a threat, they're kind of pressured to have to go into a glass build. True story. I was walking in the woods the other day, and I saw two squirrels fucking in the trees. They saw me, and bolted up the tree mid-coitus in a panic. And this experience made me realise that's exactly how wargs play. The gameplay devolves into staying in stealth and waiting for an opportunity to burst an injured freep, then sprint or hips away before anyone can kill you. For freeps, this can be frustrating because once you engage in a fight, it's usually accepted that you're committing until either you or your opponent is dead. Sure, there are some ways to escape, but bolting halfway across the map is just cowardly behaviour. And yes, Guardians, I'm also looking at you. But for wargs, this gameplay style is less of a choice and more of a necessity these days. You die to a strong breeze, and in order to be effective, you have to be very careful when picking your targets. If you take a Reaver and a Warg and put them in any situation, I can almost guarantee that the mental ward escapee with two blunt machetes is going to have a much better chance of scoring a kill and making it out alive. Next, we have the Black Arrow. Now, this class is effective. Ranged classes have a natural advantage in many situations. Its damage is respectable when built for it, and they have some nice CC and debuff potential. But, in my experience when playing in more organised fights or against a more skilled group, the Black Arrow ends up being a fucking heal debuff bot, and it's not fun at all. The class is very simple, skills don't really interact, and even with the induction buffs, it can still feel pretty clunky. And let's not even talk about the skirmisher stance, it's trash. Just look at the blue hunters now. Shining, shimmering, splendid! And now look back to this fat fuck, completely unremarkable. On the Freep side, we've seen a shift to a more tactical damage meta. The Lawmaster rework was menacing. And while we're seeing more Guardians, Bergs, and even Hunters since their rework, Yellow Runekeeper and Red Lawmaster are the classes creeps tell horror stories about to their children. Now, I'm only saying this because, let's face it, there'll always be a meta, but the point is, basically any Freep class you decide to run with can work well and be effective. The balance on this end seems pretty good. I have no real comments. Except for this. Fuck you, nerds! I demand the return of the melee meta. You Silmarillion readers have had your time in the sun. Give me my big sword gameplay right fucking now! Hashtag make Reavers more insane. Oh, and by the way, I'm not a creep main, so don't take any of my comments as bitching about my OP freeps, okay? Anyone who knows me knows that I have many ults, and I'm experienced in both PvP and PvE. Though there's something about Reaver that just scratches an itch. In my not-so-humble opinion, Update 45 is a solid addition to the mods and very nice quality of life for 2 classes on PvE. But there has been some problems. First and foremost, when Update 45 released, it came with a metric fuckton of lag. People were quick to complain about the sudden skill latency, rubber banding, and in some cases, complete bricking of their clients. Turns out that the source of this lag stems from one of the burglar changes, specifically on a roll in Blue Line. When trading into Blue Spec with this trait, it would cause your game to run like fucking molasses. Good luck firing any skills or even moving your cellulite ass anywhere but the logout button. And the best part about it? You're not gonna fucking believe this, it affected everyone on the server. There was a restart and an emergency change to the trait, which helped for about a day and a half, but by the time the weekend came around, the servers were buckling again. Luckily they did pull their fingers out of their ass and patch it as of the latest update, but believe me boy, people were fucking pissed. Another bug that was quickly discovered and highly abused was the keep chests. Turns out that Tira for All specifically did not require a key to open. Oh jeez, who could have told them that on beta? The 2-hour cooldown still applied, but providing you had a creep class slot free, you could take a 5-minute route to the chest, loot it, and do that as many times as you liked. People quickly discovered this and racked up thousands and thousands of martyr by running underground trains of unranked creeps to loot the chest over and over again. By the time SSG introduced the creep reward track, people were already loaded with martyr and were already at cap. It's just another case of poor quality assurance, and well, given the limited amount of brand new rewards, would you buy the reward track if you already earned what you're looking for? I sure won't. Look, I'll cut the guy some slack. Orion tried, he really did try. He did what he could with what little time and resources he had with this update, and I honestly see Siege as a neat addition to the mods, but it's worth keeping in mind that Orion was talking about this system as far back as 2022. He had a prototype up by 2023, it didn't function, so it was shelved until, well, now, 2025, current year. Check your calendar. Need I say any more about how PvMP is low priority? It's not really his fault. The game has many flaws, but how many times can players hear, "We don't have the resources for this," and be content with it? I'm not just talking about PvMP here, this affects the whole game. However, we're not done just yet. Let's end this video with something positive, shall we? Something big looms on the horizon. 2 of them, in fact, and they bounce. Oh, what's that, Orion? You want to talk about this cool new thing you're working on?
These will now transition the skills directly into the skill bar, not opening up a secondary skill bar. You'll be able to still maintain a number of these skills as you want, up to 3. And you still have the ability to focus on frost, fire, shadow, and acid.
An attempt was made, I suppose. Look, let me take it from here. I know SSG like to talk about limited resources, but goddamn, look at the resources on these chicks. I was lucky enough to sample her fine hors d'oeuvres on Bull, but never mind the limited footage I got from this appetizer, I'm after the main course here. We're cooking the mother of all omelettes here, Jack, and I'll be damned if I don't get my slice of the quiche. Appeal to the Hobbit mains? Check. So, the ANGMARIM Sorceress is to be a new class for monster play. I think we all know that by now, but how does she function? How do her skills play? And why am I so excited? Well... thank you for watching.